Hi, and welcome to this workshop on using NVivo for survey analysis from the Center for Teaching, Research, and Learning at American University. This is the first video in a two-part series. Overall, this workshop will go over the following topics: importing and organizing survey data, as well as coding and auto-coding functions of this data. And then finally, we'll go over some query and visualization options with the survey data within NVivo. We will be using the newest edition of NVivo, which is the 13th edition for this workshop. So if you're on an earlier edition of the software, it may look different or it might not have all the functions that we're going to go over today. I'm also working on a PC computer, so if you have the Mac edition of the software, it may look different or it might not have all the features. In this first video, I will be covering the steps for importing survey data. So we'll be using the survey import wizard within NVivo to check the data format, manage survey respondents, identify open-ended and closed-ended questions, edit question names, and then finally going over auto-coding options for themes and sentiments. This function is only available on the PC version of NVivo, so just keep that in mind if you're working on a Mac. All right, we're gonna open up NVivo now. Okay, now that we have the NVivo window up, here on the left-hand side, you'll see Files. To import a new file, we would just go to the Import tab at the top, and you'll see a bunch of different options. And under Survey, you have the options to do an Excel file, a text file, or if you want to connect your Qualtrics or SurveyMonkey accounts, that's also possible. I have my example for file as Excel, so I'm going to select that and go under where I have the file saved. All right, and here is our example survey. So I'm gonna select that and then just hit open. And that will pop up our survey import wizard. And another option I'm going to show you just before we do that is if you right click right below the list of files, you can also import that way. You'll see the options for import items, import survey, or import from new file, etc. So you can also do that way if you don't want to use this import tab. And here is our example survey. So I'm going to select that and hit open. And then we can go through the import survey wizard. This window will show you how the survey data set will be imported. Respondents will be stored as cases. Closed-ended questions, such as demographics, will be created as attributes, making them easier to filter. So if you're asking any closed-ended questions in the survey, like what is your gender, what is your age, what is your income bracket, anything like that, those will be saved as case classifications. And then you can use that to filter your data by different demographics if you're trying to compare across different groups. And then open-ended responses are created as codes. So this allows you to read open-ended responses as a group. They'll be created as a code, and each reference will be a different respondent. All right, we're going to click the next button at the bottom to go to step 2. And this is just where we say how many rows are used as question headers. So make sure you select this correctly or your data will import incorrectly, because if you say there's 2 headers when there's only 1, then it will not count the first row of your data and it'll just like mess up the format of it. And then just make sure you have your dates in the correct format that is in your file. So in this case, we have the month, day, year format as our date format. And then just hit next when you're done checking both of those. And then we're going to go to step 3. And this is where it's going to ask you if you would like to store the cases, where you would like to store the cases. So you can change the location here if you want all the cases in their own folder beneath cases, just to keep them separated from any other cases you might be creating by hand. That's possible here. I prefer that method just because it keeps it a little more organized. But again, you don't have to do that. You can just save it to cases directly. Or if you have an existing subfolder under cases, like people or survey respondents, if you're doing multiple surveys and want them all in there, that is possible as well. So just keep that in mind how you want to organize all of your survey data, and you can create whatever organization will work best for you. I'm going to keep it as its own folder under example surveys. It just automatically names it whatever your file is named. And then I'm going to hit OK. And then you need to select a unique ID for each of your cases. This is for each of your survey respondents. So whatever uniquely identifies them in your data, these are all the names of columns. So you need to select which one is different for each survey respondent. So in this case, we have a respondent ID that is different. Response ID is right there. That is different in our data for each survey respondent. So whatever you're using, whether it's their name or their email or anything like that, make sure that you select whatever is unique for each survey respondent. All right. And then your cases will be grouped together as in a classification. So if you want to create a new classification for this particular survey, you can. I'm just going to leave it as survey respondent. You can also choose to add it to an existing classification. So instead of survey respondents, if I just want to add them to, I have a classification just for people, a person, I can add them to that. But if you're doing interviews, you might want to keep your interview participants separated from your survey participants. That's just what this feature is for. So this, you can group survey respondents with this case classification. It might be helpful if you're importing multiple surveys and want to separate one survey versus the respondents for survey 1 versus the respondents for survey 2. So if I want to put respondents survey 1, that's also possible if you want to filter out and separate the different surveys. All right, and then we're going to hit next. And then this part of the survey import wizard is asking us to identify open-ended and close-ended questions. So for this, open-ended questions are any questions that are free response, that the survey respondent is normally typing in their question and they have the ability to respond however they like. Closed-ended responses are normally the more traditional, a multiple choice or something where they have to select their responses from preset options. It's not that they get to respond however they like. So open-ended is more text free response, and closed-ended is more selection-based answers. And again, open-ended responses will be used to create codes, and this will allow you to view them together as a group for further coding, while close-ended responses such as multiple choice or numerical data where they type in their age or any other demographics. All of the data selected as closed-ended responses will be used to create case attributes. And that'll allow you to filter respondents and run specific queries based on the attribute respondents have selected. So, for example, we could filter respondents by their reported gender or to compare their survey results. So keep in mind that you have to go through and make sure you agree with what NVivo guessed based on the data that each question type would be. You have the ability to change it if it guessed wrong. You can choose not to import a specific part of the data if you're not going to be analyzing it in vivo or you just don't need it, or it's not a part of your analysis. So for instance, if you don't need when they started the survey or when they ended the survey, you could just put don't import those columns or rows of data so that it won't be imported at all. And that'll just keep the data more organized and easier to view because you won't have unnecessary data. It'll also just keep it a little bit faster in downloading and stuff. It's just smaller. It'll be a smaller amount, a smaller file. You won't be asking NVivo to go through as many words when you're doing text searches and stuff like that. So make sure you've gone through, and if there is any data that you don't want to import that you don't need, I'd recommend going ahead and selecting don't import just to keep it as easy as possible and keep it running as fast as possible. In addition, you can edit the variable names at this step simply by clicking on them. All of these questions are editable. So if I click on them, it'll let me edit them. So this is pretty useful if it'll automatically like name your questions the same way they were named in Excel or whatever file that you have downloaded. But for instance, my questions are labeled Q2 and Q3, Q4, and that's not necessarily easy to remember which questions those correspond to in my survey, like what the themes and topics of those questions were. So if you want to change the name of them to something that's more self-explanatory, that's very possible. So for instance, Q2 is a question about gender. I can name that gender. So you will want to go through and change those to something that is more descriptive if that is helpful for you in your analysis or when you'll be selecting variables to visualize in your data. It'll just be easier for that selection to happen if you know what each of those questions are. Okay, and we're going to go to the last step, which is step 5. And step 5 of the survey import wizard will ask you if you'd like to auto-code themes and sentiments in your open-ended responses. So first off, keep in mind that this feature only provides preliminary results that definitely need to be double-checked by hand by the researcher. NVivo does not understand sarcasm, for instance, and it might misidentify more nuanced language as positive or negative. But if you want to try auto coding themes and sentiment, just to have something to start off with, themes will just identify different topics of your data that NVivo is seeing. And then auto coding sentiment will, NVivo will automatically auto code what it considers as positive and negative within the open ended responses, and it'll separate them based on that. So it'll identify positive, negative, and neutral statements. But again, keep in mind, more nuanced language isn't necessarily understood by NVivo in that way. So you'll definitely have to check them all by hand. So once the selection is made, you can hit the finish button on the bottom right of the window, and that'll finish off the import. And also, just a reminder that the auto coding feature for themes and sentiments is only available on the Windows version of NVivo. If you are on a Mac and want to try this feature, Mac users, it is possible at American University currently that you could access the Windows version through the American University virtual applications and desktop. So if that is something you are interested in to get the full features of NVivo um, with, and this in particular, please check that out. We will be having videos uploaded on how to use the virtual applications and desktop. So if that is something you're interested in, please either contact us or search for that tutorial as well. All right, we're going to finish off the import now. I'm going to hit finish, and you can see it importing. You can see the progress on your screen. And just be patient, especially when it gets to the auto coding. It may take a while, and just be patient while it does that. It has to go through a lot of data. All right, it looks like it's finished, so we're just going to hit close. And once the import is finished, then the survey file will appear under the files, and the data set should automatically pop up as well. There it goes. You can also double click on it to open the data set. So if we want to close this and open it later, for instance, that's just the auto coding results. I'm going to close that as well. That is all of our auto coding. All right. And if you want to open it, you would just hit a double click it. And there you go. So here is the data set with all the responses right here. And you can view the entire data set there. So in the next video, we'll be going over coding and organizing this data and different options for viewing it, and then also go over some more functions for doing queries and visualizations with survey data. So please check out the next video in the series. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.